5. Hello, Heather Martin here for URule. It's time for another Federalist paper. Today we're going to look at Federalist 5. Federalist 5 will be the last time we hear from John Jay until Federalist 64. He got very sick and didn't write any papers during his illness. Jay continues to explain to readers that nations interfere with each other. Beware the nation that openly declares you its enemy, but be even more wary of the nation that claims to be your friend. Your enemy might pretend to be your friend because it's a better way to stab you in the back. Another favorite tactic is to play one nation against the other to weaken them both. The United States was thrust into this Machiavellian world, and Jay asserts that weakness and divisions at home would invite dangers from abroad. Divided states would leave many opportunities for creating chaos for the crafty statesmen of Europe. Jay opens with a portion of a 1706 letter from Queen Anne to the Scottish Parliament about the union they were forming, and he remarks that it seems like common sense that the peoples of the British Isles would be one united nation, but instead Great Britain is composed of several warring nations. And instead of being united when dealing with the nations of Europe, these nations have been inflamed against each other by the interference of the European nations. Jay says that the states of America would be no different should they divide into 3 or 4 confederacies. Their inequalities would be revealed, and they would become jealous instead of affectionate, especially between confederate nations that share a border. A strong nation would emerge, and the others would deliberately attempt to weaken it. The strong nation would perceive this, and distrust would beget distrust. In a far-sighted bit of foreshadowing, Jay points out that there are already sharp economic differences between the northern states and the southern states, and he makes an analogy to the northern hive. The northern hive he's speaking of is the name Sir William Temple gave to the region of Europe that the Saxons came from. Jay is drawing a parallel between the power and population of the northern states and the aggressive Saxon people, and says that the weaker states to the south will be as threatened by the powerful north and its people as the southern European nations were by the Saxons of old. Jay tells his readers that history provides many examples of confederacies whose nations were formidable only to each other, and explains how this problem is exacerbated. I'm just going to read a little bit of the ending of Federalist 5 here. When did the independent states, into which Britain and Spain were formerly divided, combine in such alliance or unite their forces against a foreign enemy? The proposed confederacies will be distinct nations. Each of them would have its commerce with foreigners to regulate by distinct treaties. And as their productions and commodities are different and proper for different markets, so would those treaties be essentially different. Different commercial concerns must create different interests, and of course, different degrees of political attachment to and connection with different foreign nations. Hence, it might and probably would happen that the foreign nation with whom the Southern Confederacy might be at war would be the one with whom the Northern Confederacy would be the most desirous of preserving peace and friendship. An alliance so contrary to their immediate interest would not therefore be easy to form, nor if formed would it be observed and fulfilled with perfect good faith. He also tells readers that considering our distance from Europe, it would be more natural for these confederacies to apprehend danger from one another than from distant nations, and therefore that each of them should be more desirous to guard against the others by the aid of foreign alliances than to guard against foreign dangers by alliances between themselves. And then Jay goes on to say, how many conquests did the Romans and others make in the character of allies, and what innovations did they, under the same character, introduce into the governments of those whom they pretended to protect? Jay is warning the people of America that to be united is the best way to preserve peace, prosperity, and security. if we broke apart, it would leave all these avenues available for disruption and deceit and all kinds of infighting, and more likely, as he points out, infighting between the states. Jay and Madison and Alexander Hamilton looked to ancient history, the ancient history of Greece and Rome, the history of Europe, and the recent politics and history, the recent politics of their day in the 1700s. And it was because of that that they said, the evidence is overwhelming. This is a bad idea to break us up into these separate confederacies. And when I read this paper, I can't help but think about our own civil war that eventually occurred. As the first time I read this was about 2 years ago, I thought about Abraham Lincoln and his determination to keep the states together. And I wondered how much influence the Federalist Papers had on him, if any. I recently stumbled across a lecture given by I guess you would call him a Abraham Lincoln scholar, and he spoke about the tremendous influence that the Founding Fathers had and many of the founding documents had on Abraham Lincoln. So I can't totally verify this with a quote from Abraham Lincoln himself, but it really does seem very probable that Abraham Lincoln took what he learned from the Federalist Papers, or maybe the writing of Jay or Hamilton or Madison, and determined that he had to keep the Union together at all costs. I don't know, it's a little theory that I have. Anyway, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share, and please visit us at our website, yourule.life. Until next time, remember, you rule.